Hey everybody, it's Jim here. It's been a little bit since we did one of these Audiomo podcasts, but I'm rejoined by my friend Matt Chang, one of the guitarists for the band Strike, whose music you'll be hearing behind me right now while I'm filming this little intro clip. He recently went to Japan, so I want to hear all about his trip, all about the guitar stores that he went to, and if he ended up buying anything and bringing it back to the US of A with him. We also talked about other things regarding Japan, including Bocchi the Rock. Yeah, we had a lot of fun with that one and nerded out a little bit. If you want to check out his band or my band, there'll be links down below where you can listen to both of our music. We do appreciate that because at the end of the day, that is also extremely important. But without further ado, let's get started. How are you doing today, Matt?
I'm basically recovered from the jet lag now at this point, but it was pretty brutal.
When did you get back from Japan?
I got back on Saturday.
Okay. Yeah, day and a half. That'll do it.
Yeah. I actually was fine on the way there because I tried to basically sleep deprive myself before we went to the airport. That way I could just kind of fall asleep on the plane, which I actually was able to sneak in a few hours. So when we landed, I was fine, but the flight back, I could not I could not fall asleep.
That's a brutal flight. That's
Yeah.
not like because I can't fall asleep on planes ever, anyways. And when I know a flight is going to be that long, it's like all the more like energy builds up in me, and it's just like, I'm not going to sleep through this. And you just, you make it through at the end of the day, but it can be
It's
very taxing.
brutal.
When you get back, it's definitely brutal. And going forward in time and then going back in time, it's all really strange because they're a little bit ahead of us.
I
So
think by 18 hours, yeah.
yeah, so technically they're in the future, which makes sense given the technology and how much better they are at making guitars than we are, right?
Uh, but I was surprised though. Like you're kind of just looking at the back of your seat and seeing that, oh, there's still 9 hours left in this flight. Because I think it was like close to 12 hours over there, and on the way back was actually pretty short. It was like a 9 hour 17 flight. So I guess that we had a pretty good route kind of picked out when we were coming back home. But other than that, yeah, that I was basically just spending Saturday and Sunday just doing a lot of sleeping and just recovering from the jet lag.
Ah, it's good to hear you back though. But you went when you got there, you flew into Tokyo?
Yes, we flew into Haneda.
Okay. After you got settled in, what was the first thing that you did that was in regards to the guitar?
So we were staying in Akihabara, where there's kind of like a chain of business style hotels there, and literally right outside of our hotel, when you step out and just start walking down this alleyway, there's a place called Ikebe Music.
Yeah, I bought
Yeah,
this.
and so I went with my bassist because he's a very good friend of mine from when we were both in college together. When we discovered that, we went, "Oh, okay, well, we need to go in here now."
Yeah. They're a pretty big
Uh,
store too.
yeah, it's a big, they had a lot of new stuff too. I was surprised they had the new Les Paul Studios that Gibson put out, so I got to try one of those. And they have like that whole other section of the store dedicated to basses. And he was very tempted by it was a PJ Fender Japan jazz bass setup, and he said it's like this is better than the Jag bass I own now, and he was, like I said, he was very tempted by it.
Probably pretty reasonably priced though.
I think, how much was it? 700 to 800,000 yen, something like that.
700 to 800,000 yen. There's no way it was that much. That's vintage guitar pricing, my friend. I
Okay,
think 700
70
to
to
800 dollars.
80,000 yen. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm mixing up between my currencies here.
No, I get it. That's just it's funny to think about. It's like, whoa, because I was looking at a vintage Fender Mustang that went up for sale. And I believe it was TC Gaki, and they want 660,000 yen for that one. That was one of the competition ones. And yeah, that's a bit more expensive. Typically, new prices of Japanese guitars range from, lower end made in Japan around that price, where it'll be, $600-700. And some brands like Greco, they're even lower than that, which is incredible on some of their models. And then other ones, it can go all the way up like once you start getting into the more premium Tokais, the vintage premium Tokais, like the 200 series, Those ones are around 200,000 yen. So that's right where the entry of like the really good Japanese stuff starts, so to speak.
Right. I'm surprised Greco is still around because I know that Fernandez recently kind of went kaput. So I was pleasantly surprised to see a bunch of Greco stuff when we were going into some of these shops.
Yeah, they have a lot of new interesting stuff. Did you see their new Stratocasters? They're pretty cool. They have like flame tops. They did a bunch of custom colors, not too dissimilar to what Tokai did. Like they have like a purple flame, and I was like, that's very unconventional for a Greco or a brand like that to do on a Strat. But they have super narrow nutwits on them, but they're cheap. They're very, very, very inexpensive for Japanese made instruments. And I think maybe that they're kind of trying to shift their market maybe towards something like that, because in Japan there's so much competition in their mid-range, in their high range right now. And I personally think, the best Grecos ever made, those were made in the 70s and the 80s, and it's going to be tough to enter that market again without, sacrificing profits or, I don't know, differentiation at that point.
Right. I saw a lot of Greco basses too.
Mhm.
Those were super cool.
Did you see them in the Fender style or?
Yeah, mostly into this kind of P basses and jazz bass kind of configurations.
Hmm. Now I know that you're more of a Gibson kind of guy. You have a Gretsch and you have the Jazz Master. But when you were in Ikebe, did you see any of the Van Zants? Because they're a really big dealer of Van Zants in Momose.
I saw a few of those, yeah. I was also surprised by how many dealers in Japan. They have a lot of love for Zemaitis over there.
Yeah, yeah, those are really, really inexpensive too. A lot of those are very reasonably priced, especially compared to even Tokai.
Mhm. It was just kind of funny though. We saw the differences between those Zemaitis and then the ones that are inlaid with all the mother of pearl tops that cost like 1 million yen,
Yeah. And they appeal to a lot of people too because they're very light.
which I wouldn't have thought, but I always thought that those guitars were super cool.
No, they are, and they kind of got like a bit of a small resurgence, and they kind of hit a new market because uh the rhythm guitarist for BAND-MAID uses a Zemaitis, and that band is huge, huge, huge.
I saw a lot of posters for them.
So, and like, what better advertisement, especially if you're trying to get people that wouldn't necessarily normally look at your brand. You have an all-girl band that's super good. They play, heavier rock to pop music. They're well known throughout the country. They're awesome live, and it's like girls can see that and be like, "Oh, I could be like that." Like that's the kind of guitar. It's just like Bocchi and stuff like that. People want Les Paul customs now because of Bocchi the Rock, but that's a little bit more expensive and a little bit heavier than a Zemaitis.
Yeah, there was a you mentioned that there was I was doing a project for one of my master's degree programs, my classes where I was talking heavily about the influence that multimedia can have on selling stuff and choosing to pick a new market to go into. And I remember reading somewhere this saying that there was a picture I remember seeing where a bunch of people were buying Epiphone or Grassroots black Les Paul customs because of that show.
And before that too, there was a show K-On!
Hmm.
That one made candy apple red Fender Mustangs with the matching headstocks. The MG69 specifically get really popular for a time too, because the lead guitarist in that band used that in the anime. It's so funny when you really think about it, because to some people, if like they watch a lot of anime, they watch a lot of shows in general, that'll be like their influence to them. And what was cool about those shows and so many of the music based animes that are from Japan, there's so much original music that gets put into them, so you actually get to hear them. And I saw, it had to have been posted like a year and a half ago, but the actual performers for the Bocchi the Rock soundtrack, they were live in studio and doing it all as a full band together. And it was just like it was wild to see it because you
Yeah,
like the characters and then you see the girls doing it in real life. It was super gnarly.
it was really cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
especially too because I think most of those VAs they have to do some singing too, so it was super cool to see them do that live.
yeah, and they're really, really good. It's not a joke. Like some of this stuff, like it is not stuff that you can just like teach a novice player that does VA voice acting. If people are watching this and they're like, "What the hell are these two nerds talking about?" So if you're doing voice acting, basically, you're acting as a character in an anime or a cartoon or what have you. Um, to be able to perform as a musician at a high level, and some of these songs are it's pretty cool. It's really cool, and it's more appreciation that goes into it. It's not just somebody showing up to a studio, talking into a mic, and then leaving after their voices sync up with the film.
Right. Uh, on that, I saw a couple of those actually. There's another kind of multimedia franchise called Bang Dream, or I think it's called Bandori in Japan, where I saw a couple of those guitars from that were played by characters on the shows, and those guitars were super sweet. But they also said ESP, so those were like 700 to 800,000 yen.
Yeah, the ESP branded ones were super expensive. Um, they had grassroots versions, but I think they sold out like really quick,
Yeah,
which would make sense if your alternative is like for people that don't know like the hierarchy of ESP guitars in Japan, you have grassroots at the very bottom here. Those are like, kind of import whatever. And then you have Edwards, and then you have E2, and then ESP, just production, and then you have custom shop and navigator and all that kind of fun stuff on top of that. So knowing that you do have all those lines to work with, you can offer things kind of not too dissimilar to how Fender do things with Squire and stuff like that, and Gibson with Epiphone.
those were one of the guitars that I really was interested in checking out was I think for one of the bands that was called Rosalia in that series, where a guitarist in that band plays this really cool M2. It has like a dark blue flame top on it and like a super cool rose inlay on the 12th fret. And I was only able to find one on Reverb for like 4 grand from 2 years ago, and I've never been able to find one since.
Yeah. It's funny how that's changed too, because you had Beck. Beck had a lot of popular Japanese Fender models. They had a Mustang and a Telecaster. Those still to this day fetch a high amount of money. But in Japan prior to that, the only like artist model that I could think of from a band that has nothing to do with any other sort of media is the old ex Japan guitarist who's passed away, God rest his soul, was Hide. Hide had that Fernandez slash Bernie kind of like the Mockingbird shape, but it had a yellow finish and hearts on it, and then a few words in English that were a little suggestive. If you ever see those pop up, they sell like almost immediately in Japan. They're actually hard to find to import because whenever I do see one, it's 9 times out of 10 somebody already bought it, even if it's only been for sale like an hour or an hour and a half. Just super popular. And obviously, X Japan is probably, if not the biggest rock band in the history of that country. Like what they did was incredible. And yeah, it's just wild to think that it's gone from somebody like that who is selling out the Tokyo Dome and all these other places around the world to selling guitars to now it's anime characters that we're seeing every week.
It's cool though that they come up with some cool stuff for those characters though. I love it.
I don't disagree. It's just weird when you sit back and you think about it. That's all.
Yeah, a signature model for an anime character.
Well, Gibson's done it too. They had
Yeah, I have, yeah.
they did that. What was it? It was like an ocean perimeter for a Goro. That was a
Yes.
very, very popular guitar too in Japan. The only problem was in America it didn't really make a difference because they had already made Les Paul standards from 2014 that had that finish and then onwards in limited runs. So it wasn't like that different, and most people here wouldn't know that anime anyways. So in Japan, still really expensive, still really popular. But Yeah, I think it's really cool to integrate that and to get it's also smart from the Japanese companies and even like Gibson when they do this, like we just talking about with the Goro, because it does get you the younger audience. It gets you people that might not be interested in guitar to say, you know what, like that's really cool. I want to do that.
Yeah, I'm that was a big part of it too, was especially seeing so many. I remember just after Bocchi came out, and when I saw the first previews of it, I thought, okay, I see girl playing a black Les Paul custom into a Marshall. I don't care what the show's about. I'm sold. And so I didn't think that show was going to be as big as it was because there were a lot of other pretty big anime that were coming out that season too.
Yeah.
So when it kind of ran away as like this big sleeper hit that resonated with a lot of people, and you started seeing videos on YouTube of people, talking about the gear Bocchi uses and those getting a fair amount of views, I was very pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, that was like a lightning in a bottle kind of transition though from mangaka to anime because it allowed them to really take chances to make situations because basically Bocchi is extremely anxious all the time. For people that haven't seen this, like she's just super talented guitarist, but very meek, very shy in the beginning of it. And as things go on, it kind of gets better. But like the way that they were able to exaggerate situations where she was like having panic attacks or hiding in like boxes and all this really funny stuff. Like it's hard to compare mangaka to anime, but I think because of the way that they did it, it made it even better. And I think that really helped it out because 9 times out of 10, if you think about like traditional animes, the mangaka is normally better, like but by a margin, and you get a lot more information. But for that one, I felt like yeah, like this was like a worthy and needed kind of adaptation.
Yeah, they just put Bocchi in so many surreal, ridiculous situations, and they clearly had a lot of fun with it.
Let me tell you something. When I woke up today, one of the last things that I thought was going to happen was I was going to have a conversation with anybody about Bocchi the Rock.
We were talking a small bit about anime last night, and I was thinking about saying watch Bocchi the Rock, but then I figured you probably have already seen it.
No, it's great. For those of you who are curious, you could get it on a Crunchyroll in the United States of America, and you'll be able to watch all of it. It's really good. It's not just as the at the kids. The basis has alcohol problems. There are money problems. It is real band stuff. It's good. It's really good. I would definitely recommend it. But for those of you who are like, all right, I didn't come for this. We'll end this one section of that there. But I could talk about anime all day. Maybe we'll do it on a different one. Uh, what was the best guitar that you played? Did you buy anything? And what was the most tempting thing?
So when we went to Ochanomizu on our second day there, and it was cool that that is literally just one station away from where we were staying. And when we went there, kind of things were still opening up. Stuff wasn't totally open yet. So we kind of wandered into this one shop. Turns out that was an ESP custom shop. And it's like a dedicated workshop to ESP. So they had Grassroots, they had Edwards, and then like on the second floor, it was just an entire section dedicated to the custom shop where you could pick out the woods you wanted and all of that stuff. It was that was probably our favorite shop. That was the first one we went into, and we went in there again before we went back home. I so I tried out an Edwards Flying V, which was the thing that I was probably most tempted by. And we went while we were kind of wandering around Ochanomizu. I went into that store that had the listing of that 77 you sent me,
Mm,
and that too was very very tempting.
that was Guitar Planet.
Yes, it was Guitar Planet. It was cool though that you asked if you can play something, and there are all these super expensive guitars on the wall. They let you try everything out. They tune it up for you and everything, and I thought that was super cool.
Yeah, it's a different experience compared to here with that, especially because like they're a lot more hands-on with it, but they kind of assume that people are going to be respectful and cautious with what they have in their hands. So there's a lot of leadway. But that's not always the case, depending on some of the stores. But a lot of them, for the most part, are excellent when it comes to
Mhm.
that. They want to make sure that everything is perfect for you before you even plug the thing in.
As far as stuff I bought though, I maybe the next time I go back there and when I'm a richer man, I'll buy a guitar from there. But I just ended up buying some picks and then I bought an ESP shirt from that shop that we first went into.
That's it. You didn't buy yourself that flying V. How much was it?
Uh, I think 110,000-ish yen.
That's not bad.
It's not. It was a great playing guitar too.
That's not bad at all. You could have had that and had it shipped to the United States for about $1,000 with
Mhm.
everything all in.
And the flight that we were on to, they said 2 free checked bags, and I only had my backpack and a carry-on, so I could have gate checked that or something.
It is what it is. It's not a big deal. When you were in the shops, though, this is something I wanted to talk about. I wasn't sure if you would notice this, but I mean, I follow the market a lot, both new and used. I talk to a lot of people that run shops in Japan on a regular basis, and I get a lot of kind of information like a little bit before it happens, and then it becomes public as far as pricing and new models and stuff. Did you notice any significant prices being different than perhaps what you had seen online recently on new guitars?
On new guitars. Not I wasn't paying too close attention to that, especially too since a lot of the shops we went to, a lot of their inventory was kind of used or vintage guitars.
All right, because what's interesting is there's brands like Tokai and Fender Japan's too. They're also they're increasing and it's going to go up by a bit. The value proposition is starting to get a little bit more like as the yen slightly recovers a little bit. The dollar just whatever. We're not going to talk about that. And then just the companies themselves raising prices. In August of this year, Tokai made an announcement that pretty much all their Japanese made Les Pauls are going up a minimum of I think it's 28,000 yen. So that's really about call it roughly $200 ish per guitar because it varies. Each model's a little bit different, but it's across the board. And guitars here, people buy a lot more and people will have, kind of more than we need a lot of the time. Whereas there, it's more like, yeah, I could do one and maybe two and that's it. Everything else is like seen as excessive, and that's why you see so many people with one guitar, and they just like that's their guitar over there, and they take really good care of it. I don't know how that's gonna play out because they don't spend as much as we do, and for brands like Fender Japan, you're always gonna have people that are gonna be able to import those, and there's always gonna be a market for anything branded Fender on the headstock. Just like if Gibson were making guitars still in Japan, even if it was under the Orville moniker they'd still sell for sure. And the Gretsch guitars, same thing. Some of those, the higher end ones, are made in Japan outside of the handmade custom shops that are the United States made. I don't know how a brand like Tokai is going to do in the long run with a slower kind of like buying mentality between a lot of people and prices going up on on new stuff so much. I don't know. I just found it really interesting because it seemed like a pretty substantial increase on some brands.
Especially too since Tokai is one of those brands that is if you know you know kind of thing that maybe not the layman guitar player really knows too much about, going into the rabbit hole of Japanese guitar brands as well.
No, and Tokai's complicated too, and it's partially Tokai's fault because if you pick up something that says Tokai in the headstock and you don't know what you're looking at, you could be playing an entry level Chinese version of it, and you could say this thing is junk, and then you could write off the whole brand like that. It's one thing that I've given Gibson a lot of credit for over the years if you ever pick up a Gibson guitar that's not a blatant Gibson, like if you're actually shopping at a legitimate store and they're selling a Gibson, it's a real Gibson. Um, you know it's made in America. With Tokai, you don't have that luxury. So you could have a guitar that was made in China, you could have a guitar that was made in Korea, or you could have a guitar that was made in Japan. Plus, their method of kind of how they grade things model wise, like for example, like now, I think the entry level for a Japanese made Tokai in the vintage line is the 101 series. You have the 101F, 101 SPL for special, where we have P90s in it. And those, I believe, the pricing is 176,000 yen. Previously, there were two series below that, like the LS 148F. That's the blue one that you were looking at that I told you about. That one, again, 148 price right there on it. Uh, that's almost 30,000 price increase because there's not a whole lot different between the LS 148 and the LS 101 that's replacing it in the line. But the main thing is, unless you really, really order it new, once you get like 5, 10 years removed from the Tokais, it becomes very difficult for people in the West to figure out those models and differentiate which ones are which, unless you're like a real expert in them. So
Right.
it could be intimidating, and I understand, I really do, why some American buyers would be hesitant. First of all, you can't play them new. Second of all, it doesn't say like whatever the model name is on the guitar itself. They all look very similar in that sense. Like they look like Les Pauls if you're looking at one of their Les Pauls, you know?
Yeah, I and I feel like in that sense, ESP's done a pretty good job there in that sense, differentiating themselves because you can clearly, they have all the tiers of their brands with Grassroots, Edwards, Navigator, and all that stuff that's kind of in between.
Yeah, you're right. And even with them though, if you're looking at an Edwards Les Paul, like one of the ELPs, that could be as cheap as the entry level one, or it could be one of the higher end LTSs, which have the lacquer on them. And if you don't know what you're looking at, or you don't pull the thing and take a look at it or do a test to see if it's nitro or not, they all look very similar. And they're all going to have Seymour Duncan pickups in them. So,
Yeah.
yeah, not that it's a big price difference in those. I think it's like 30,000 yen price difference between like the lowest end Edwards and the highest end Edwards as far as regular Les Paul goes. Then you get the customs and all that stuff too. But it's by nowhere like what Tokai has, because like you said, when if you want like the better model from there on up, you don't want an Edwards, you're going to an entirely different brand.
Right. Yeah, because that was something I noticed too, is a lot of those Japanese guitar companies, they like Seymour Duncan's a lot.
You do. And it makes sense because if you get a good partnership with that brand, if you're the guitar manufacturer and you order a lot. First of all, Dunkins are already very, very reasonably priced for the end consumers like you and I. So if you're going to be ordering thousands and thousands of these sets in bulk, you're going to get a great break on that. And then it's just like the standard sound for so many genres. We were talking about this the other day, and the JB, the 59, and the custom bucker, just like those three sets alone, or those three individual like models of Seymour Duncans, like you mix and match those, there's not much you're not going to be able to do with it.
Yeah, 100%. It's just kind of funny that how a lot of those pickups that are based uh on a certain sound, and then even then a lot of other pickup manufacturers since then still just try to emulate what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, that's all it is every time though. Everyone's just chasing, the same tail, trying to get onto the same thing. And I think it says a lot about Duncan too that these pickup designs have remained the same for decades and decades and decades. So they haven't changed a whole lot. They haven't needed to. They've added in, they have more modern pickups and higher output and active and all that kind of stuff these days. But those classics, man, they're classics.
They work.
They
They work.
their work. And for so many people, they think, oh, I have to have the high end stuff. Like I love Lawler pickups. But when it comes to humbuckers, if I want like that kind of raw rock sound, maybe the Lawlers would be better, so to speak, you know. But the Duncans, like, I don't think it would be like a huge difference between them. You know what I mean? Like, it's weird to kind of say, like, you know what? Maybe they wouldn't be better. Maybe it's just different palettes. Maybe that's the way that everything should be looked at, just different kind of sound palettes.
That was something I kind of noticed too when I got my Maybach in as well, was that those, I think those are made by a German pickup company called Amber, where those are they those are very expensive pickups, and they try to definitely go for accurate PAF recreation. I wasn't sure how I was going to get along with those because because that I play in a hard rock band, but I actually really like how those sound when I add a little bit of drive to them.
No clean.
Sometimes clean. We have we have one song that has a clean intro now. We actually just finished writing that one.
How many songs do you guys have recorded?
Right now two, but we're hoping to get into the studio in the next couple months and get our next one done.
Now, has your strategy just been the kind of modern one? I mean, based on what you're telling me, it kind of is. It's single, 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 single. You focus on that, you get it done, you post it, you get it out there. And
Yeah.
isn't it sad the attention spans of people?
Yeah. I mean, I would like to, and we've talked about it before, and I would like to get everything recorded and put it out as an EP or an album, but it makes too much sense to just release stuff as singles today. That way, all the attention is on those songs, and you don't have to worry about something getting lost if you release it as an album.
Mhm. And you're still posting this all to Spotify. How long do you wait once you have something recorded? Like for the first two songs, for example, like how long did you wait? Actually, forget the first one because the first one's always the toughest one to post. For the second song, how long did you wait after you had what you were happy with posting to post it to Spotify?
I want to say we didn't wait that long. It was probably less than a week that we waited to post it since when we got like the final mix. And then the only thing we did different with the release of the second one was that me, our singer, and our drummer posted like a couple silly promo videos for it.
Yeah, that's a big part of it because you can have great songs, but if people don't know that they're coming or people don't care about you, there's just too much stuff out there, and you're competing for people's time and attention, and that's
Mhm.
very difficult when you
Yeah.
consider the competition because it's everybody now.
When I'm log on to Instagram, that I get so many sponsored posts of people, just local bands that are in California or just everywhere around the country or around the world, even. A lot of people on bands.
It's a rough way to do it. The and it can get expensive too. That's the other trick too. It's like you're just taking a penny that you throw into the fountain. You're the penny, but you're paying a bunch of money to get thrown into the fountain instead of just making a wish.
Mm.
Speak. And I don't know, like you've said that the people that support you guys that come and see the shows, like they're really behind you and all of that. So I think I've always thought that that's been the best way to do it is to build people, build an audience, build a following from playing live.
Right. And after our last gig at the Viper Room too, that was a really good one because we were able to get a good time slot where we were able to leech a bunch of the other audience members that were there for the headliner. I think they were a Ghost tribute band, and a lot. It wasn't just our people that showed up. Like a lot of the random people that were there seemed really into us as well.
Yeah, you guys are good. You guys are tight. So
We
a big thing.
Mhm. And I don't know. We were just on it that night.
Well, we all have some nights where we're better than other nights. But as a whole, though, if you get into a band where everybody's really got their stuff together, especially from a performance aspect, on top of the actual being able to play what you're trying to play, because sometimes I've seen acts where they're putting on a great show, man. They really are. They're up there. The stage presence is awesome. The energy is there. It's just like this great vibe. But man, they didn't practice nearly as much as they should have. But then you see other bands where they spent all their time practicing, and you're just watching mannequins, so to speak. So finding that like balance, and then finding a band where like everybody's like that, that's a cool thing. And I think that's part of the reason that you guys are starting to get so much traction.
Yeah, we hope so. We're trying to think about that aspect a little bit more too, now that we have a decent amount of original songs under our belt and we know how to like kind of pace out a set list. Now we're thinking about we all, that's kind of a feedback we've gotten, was that it looks like we're all having fun while playing, but that we're all kind of doing our own thing. So that's something we're kind of looking into, is being a little bit more coordinated, or coming up with just certain moves to do when they hit certain highlight points in the songs.
It sounds silly, but it's not. Like, you might think it's ridiculous to have somebody say that. Like, I don't know if you do or not, but you like somebody would hear that and they might think, "Oh, like, well, I'm not gonna choreograph this. Like, I'm in a rock band. This is stupid." No, man, like little things like that, like little cues can make a huge difference.
It does. That one of the songs, it's our closer song, but something that I've just kind of started doing now, we get to a point where it slows down a little bit, it calms down a little bit, where I hit a big old A power chord, turn on a phaser, and while I'm letting that ring out, I just over my head just start doing this. And that always gets people going. Always does.
See, you found your one trick right there. You just got to get the rest of the band to get into it. How, is it just you that's taking a break? I'm assuming the drummer's still going.
Yeah, I mean that point of the song is just me holding out that chord, and then he's just pounding out on the kick drum basically.
Well, then, yeah, you get everybody that's not the drummer to go in line with you, and there you go. You're set. And the singer just rocks up right in the middle and then carries from there, and then you all jam in together. See, I don't even know what song you're talking about. And I'm like, I could see it in my head. It makes sense.
Our singer, his crowd work at that last gig was he had that audience in his palm.
Yeah. Well, if you have confidence, man, and you have, the talent to back up that confidence, he's got some pipes. Uh, yeah, it can work, but it takes time. It takes time to
It
figure
does.
it all out, and you guys will be good. So, what is your next show, and where is your next show?
Our next show is it's a Halloween gig. It's on October 25th, I believe, and
Uh,
that's also going to be on the Sunset Strip at a place called State Social, I think.
nice, nice. How many bands are playing that night?
I haven't checked the bill yet, but I would hazard a guess 4 to 5.
That makes a lot of sense. That'd be
Yeah.
fun. That'd be fun. And when's the next time that you guys plan on releasing an individual song? And is there anything you want me to post with this for other people to hear that is more recent, whether it's a video clip or, a song or something like that?
Well, our next song will be out hopefully before the end of November.
Okay. Well, you have to let me know when that's going to happen in advance so that I can at least let people know that way. It's a lot easier to promote something if you know it's
When
coming.
you when you have stuff to go with it too, it typically helps as well.
It does. And you're talking to somebody I had an album done for a year and a half. I had masters in my hands. And because I was in Florida and the other person I did it with was in California and life was very difficult. We were both fathers, two young daughters. Paperwork did not get done on his end. Part of it was, my fault. Part of it was his fault. But we just sat on these stupid songs forever. And eventually, it got posted. But I mean, it's funny how these things can work, and you just have to be proactive.
Hmm. That was a great release. I was happy to see that you put, after doing gear reviews for so long, to see you guys put out some music.
Well, it bothers me. I could tangent on this hard, but I appreciate that. It's interesting. There's a lot to it. I'm actually going to hold off because I want to talk to you again, and I want to focus on this too because I do want to talk about the gear stuff, and I also want to talk about Nam. But I wanted to keep today to Japan to keep both of our sanity.
Sure.
So Yeah, because I don't know, like we have like normal conversations, and this will probably make it into the video too, but like it's very easy when you just like have a good like ebb and flow with somebody. You could go for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. But I feel like that wouldn't make for other people's good listening.
For other
Yeah.
people's entertainment.
And here's the thing, like I've done this for 4 years. I shouldn't care anymore, you know? But I don't know. I think that, you know, two or three topics, we write down general ideas and then we just talk. Makes things a little bit easier, a little more streamlined. And then if they like it, they could tune into the next one that we'll have figured out and we'll go from there.
I mean, even when we were talking about Bocchi and the other band shows or just anime in general, I feel like I have a feeling just talking to you and our chats over Discord that we could talk about that for a long time even, but I'm sure we would probably lose a lot of people just talking about that.
Well, I'll say this. If anybody is this far into it and you enjoy the anime talk, or you like Bocchi, or you like Kaon, or you like Beck, or you like anything, let me know. Let us know in the comments section that we are not alone here. Because dude, that would be a hilarious regular thing to talk about. Would just be anime songs or anime bands, not even just necessarily the bands in the shows, but bands that are like really well known for supplying the songs for the intros and the outros, because it's like a circuit of a bunch of bands that consistently keep getting these gigs because they really know how to write for it. It just works out really cool. And so many people love those songs. And you get introduced to so many awesome Japanese bands. If you just pay attention to the intros and the outros of these animes, even if you don't like the animes, that's a great way to find music.
Red Wimps is a big one. They've done a lot of good music for a lot of like pretty high profile movies that have come out over there too.
Yep. Yep. And dude, you just think about Asian Kung Fu Generation, man.
Oh, those guys are good.
Well, it's just they were there since the beginning, man. Since the beginning. And Flow, you know, they were on early Naruto. You had I could go. I could go. See, this is what I'm talking about, though. We could easily just tangent on about this for days. Let us know though if you'd like to hear that, and let us know what your favorites are. But for today, if you don't got anything to plug, you're playing on the 25th, Sunset Strip, something social, society social.
State Social House, I think,
So,
is the name of the venue.
dude, I had 90% of it except the name of the venue. I was like, I know the date, I know where it's at, but that's it. And yeah, well, I'll leave a link down below. You will have heard, he doesn't know this because I told him I filmed an intro to this, but he doesn't know I did this. You will hear a clip of their latest song before this. If you'd like to hear the full thing from what you heard before you actually heard me and him start to talk, me and Mr. Matt, you can click on the link below in the description of this video and check out that and the other stuff from their YouTube channel. And I encourage them to post more things, especially with music. I encourage them to post more things to the rest of the band. I encourage you all to not let Matt do it all on his own, not because he's incapable, but because we all need to do our work. Thank you for listening today, everybody. We hope you've had a wonderful time. I'm smiling. Matt, I appreciate that you came on to do this again. I look forward to doing it on, you know, I don't know, a week, 2 weeks, whenever you have time.
It's always fun doing this. I always have a blast.
All right, man, take it easy.